And then I got a beep and dug up this plastic bag, and inside it was the note tied to the wedding band. Yep.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. I love it.
Yep.
That's a memorable hunt for sure.
Yeah, that was my best find.
Well, I'm guessing you said yes, so.
Yep, definitely. Did not hesitate in the least.
That's a fantastic story. I love it. Oh my.
Yeah, we had sort of a detector-themed wedding in some regards.
Yeah.
Some of the music was related to metal detecting. We had a cake topper that was both of us with metal detectors. It was made, in our likenesses for the top of the wedding cake. His and hers, tuxedo and wedding dress with metal detectors in our hands. The thing that I regret was not having like a little sandbox and maybe a cheap detector or two so that people could just find some coins in like a seated sandbox, there during the reception. But
right.
And then we went on a privy dig and a digging trip for our honeymoon, extended digging trip. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, because I was just going to get into what other types of treasure hunting do you do?
Well, I used to do privy digs, but down here the water table is so low it makes things very, very complicated to get in there. Plus, they like to throw oyster shells down here into privies, and oyster shells turn to almost the form of concrete. Once you dig down a certain amount, you're really in you have to pump out water, and you're kind of chiseling through concrete, and it's just it's a different animal. So I don't find it as enjoyable as digging privies elsewhere was.
Right.
I've kind of aged out of that maybe a little bit. It's part of it's the hauling of the dirt and the filling in of the hole, and all of that is just it's best with a team. But I still beach hunt, relic hunt, and I don't do much in the way of parks and tot lots anymore, but I used to when I was young. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So where's your favorite place you've ever lived that you treasure hunted at? Do you have a certain...
Oh, Louisiana, by far.
By far? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do like the fact that I feel like it was a little easier to find sites in other states, because a lot of times the geography would rule out certain things. You're not going to have an old house site on a hillside that's, a steep slope, or you're not going to have something in a floodplain of a creek, or, there's a lot of stuff that it would kind of, the geography would rule it out. But here it's like things are so flat that, it's like anything could be anywhere, and it just takes a lot of time to find each spot.
Right.
So how do you go about researching where you're going to end up going? Do you use do you go to the library, use historic map works, or anything like that?
Without oversharing, I use some of the things that probably a lot of people use.
Yep.
But those things like map overlays and stuff like that, I mean, back 20 years ago, I was using map overlays when I did not live in Louisiana, and that was super useful, and nobody else was doing it, it seemed, or very few people were, 20, 25 years ago. That would have been, in the early 2000s or late 90s. And just like every site was untouched, on every map. So that was really nice. But, now, the hobby's continuing to change. And so part of the goal is to stay a step ahead. And it's far better to do that with your research and with your ideas than to, just buy the same equipment as everybody else and hope for different results, So I think I'll just say that there's some of that I use. I use some diaries and some historical documents. And then there's types of documents that I use that probably most people wouldn't think of as being something that would have any clues. But I think you just have to, when you find something that works, there's no reason to put it down until everybody else catches up, and then you got to find the next thing that works. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. Love it.
Nothing wrong with not sharing. But
Right.
yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things that I know I'm pretty sure I do that I don't know if too many around here do. And it's great. It works out great. It works great.
So that was a memorable find that, you and your wife found that when she found that Morgan. Do you have a favorite find or a favorite story, something you found?
We found some things together that have been pretty meaningful. There was one hunt that almost felt like deja vu. It's like we got two of everything, and I can't remember all the things we got two of, but it seemed like we got matching finds for a lot of the hunt, and that was really weird. She would find something and I would find one of the same, an hour later or whatever, or vice versa. And so there's this kind of interesting, weird moments. But one of the finds that's really special, and I've since found more of these types of rings, but I found she got the first one actually, which was a coin silver ring that had two hearts on it.
Wow.
Those were available during most of the 1800s, but because they're coin silver, they tend to date, earlier than about 1870s or so. Once the Comstock lode was discovered, the United States had a usable source of higher quality silver than just melting down Spanish reals. So you started to see more 92.5 silver instead of 90% silver. But for most of our history, coin silver was the way to go up until the 1870s or 80s, until we started to adopt the sterling standard in the United States. But these twin heart rings are old. They can be Civil War, around the Civil War, or even antebellum, or they can be up to about 1880, 1890. But they tend to all be coin silver. And so she found one of those, which I thought was like the perfect find. It might have even been a Valentine's Day. I don't remember. It seems like there was maybe a Valentine's Day where we both had a weekend. It was time for us to both be off or whatever. And so we went maybe that weekend of Valentine's Day. And then I found one, basically the same kind of thing. So it was kind of like a neat little, like almost a quasi re-engagement ring moment. So I thought that was cool.
Wow. So do you both wear some found rings as your...
Well, I had there was a bar brooch that I found that was like bent in half and tarnished and didn't even look like silver. It looked like almost decorative aluminum. But it probably dates the 1860s or 70s. And I found that a plow had smacked it and bent it in half, but it was still intact. And, it's important to have a good master jeweler that you trust, because they can do amazing things. I mean, they can reconstruct stuff. They can put back together those silver spoons that you've dug the pieces of, or restore jewelry. And I've had several of those types of projects, but this bar brooch was just stunning. And I had it redone and gave it to her as a gift. So there is some of that, where we'll do something like that for each other. Even this the cast iron piece that she recently found. It's this closet. It's from a warming closet of the stove, I think, decorative cast iron stove. And she found both pieces of it in West Virginia last summer. In the middle of nowhere, we were up on a knoll looking for an old log cabin site, and she found the first piece, and then later on that day found the second piece. And thinking about having that welded back together and maybe giving that to her, we maybe put that such a beautiful architectural piece. I think it should maybe go above a closet or something as a nice little sign or architectural treasure.
That'd be a perfect spot for it. And it's just beautiful. I saw it on your Instagram, and I was just like, oh, that's gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there with a Dremel tool and a pick on that. It kind of looked like macaroni and cheese when she first found it. So it's one of those things that it's like a labor of love. Digging is a labor of love in general, and then all the identification and preservation and display of everything is also, another labor of love. And it really takes all of that to be successful in the hobby, because you're only as good as your ability to identify and repair and restore and stabilize the things that you find, so that future people can have that history too.
Yeah, and that gets into you're planning on sharing a lot of history with a lot of us coming up soon. Well, in the next, year you said?
In the next year, yeah, that's an interesting story. So I've written over the years many articles for American Digger magazine, for Western and Eastern Treasures, and I decided that, it might be kind of interesting to, explore any sort of a book or anything like that. But then all of a sudden, Butch Holcomb at American Digger just reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to do a book?" He had something in progress or in process, which was Bill Dancy's second book, which was an excellent book. If you all haven't seen that or read that, it's like case studies of 1600s and earlier sites in Virginia. It's just pretty fascinating. But he was in process with that book and just reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to do a book?" And I thought about it, and I was like, "Yeah, I think that would be really nice. It'd be interesting." So he sent me a contract for a 350-page book and on relic identification, and then I proceeded to write what I think is probably going to be at least a 600-page book. Don't tell him. And so the writing's all done, but it's been 2 years of writing and now 6 months of layout, and I guess we're about 150 pages in the layout right now. So we've got a long way to go. But the goal of this book is to identify the vast majority of what could be found in the United States between around 1700 to as late as 1945 or so, and just looking at the majority of what's found. So I think that 90% of what's dug is going to be in there. 1,400 photos and counting, full color, and lots of great information and write-ups on everything from China doll legs and arms and the dating of those to toy teacups and pewter toys and tin soldiers and marbles and ceramic shards and glass buttons and just you name it, weapons and militaria, and there's so much in there. So I'm excited to finally get to see a copy eventually after already 2.5 years of work. But yeah, that's going to be really gratifying. And I'm hoping that it'll be out by 2025 spring.
Can't wait. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Gypsy and I have found and dug quite a few of those things, so it'll be awesome to see the history and whatnot on them.
Oh, definitely. Because sometimes it's just hard to, if you don't have a book reference and then you're Googling things and researching, sometimes it can take a while. It's nice to have a reference book that you can just go and I know that's what I bug Amanda every time there's a button that I'm not familiar with. Maybe I've seen it, but I can't, sometimes when you're out in the field and then you're, before I do my YouTube video, I want to know for sure. So I'll say, "Hey, Amanda, check your button reference for me." And,
but
you can't always find it, on the internet.
And I mean, if any
Yeah,
of you
it's
are following
tough.
on, yeah, and if any of you are following on